He walked in wearing his tennis whites, asking how I felt, unaware that I was clutching the real medication in my pocket and plotting how to return the favor. My husband insisted on filling my pill organizer every Sunday night, claiming it was his way of taking care of my failing heart. I thought he was the perfect partner, until one afternoon I dropped a pill on the wet bathroom floor and watched it dissolve into a sticky, sugary puddle within seconds. That was the moment I realized the bitter medication meant to keep my heart beating had been replaced with sugar pills, and the man sleeping next to me was patiently waiting for me to die. The bathroom was cold, the kind of sterile, tiled chill that seeps into your bones. The cinematic lighting emphasized the isolation of the moment, just me, the humming of the vent, and the white pill dissolving on the slate-gray tile. I stared at it. My prescription was digoxin. It was a hard, compressed chemical compound. It wasn't supposed to melt like cotton candy. I dipped my finger into the white puddle and touched it to my tongue. Sweet. Sickeningly, cloyingly sweet. My heart gave a painful thud in my chest, a real symptom, not a phantom one. For the last 3 months, I had been deteriorating. I was breathless walking up the stairs. My vision would tunnel at the edges when I stood up too fast. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold a pen. "It's just the adjustment period," Clara, James would say, rubbing my back with his warm, reassuring hands. "Dr. Evans said the side effects would be rough. You just need to rest. Let me handle everything." And he did. He handled the cooking, the cleaning, the finances, and the medicine. I looked at the blue plastic pill organizer sitting on the counter. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, all filled with identical white, round pills. I grabbed the organizer and retreated to the bedroom, locking the door. My hands were trembling, partly from the condition, partly from the terror dawning on me. I took out a pill from Tuesday. I crushed it with the bottom of a glass. It turned into fine white powder instantly. I tasted it. Sugar. I took a pill from Friday. Sugar. He had replaced them all, every single one. I sat on the edge of the bed, the room spinning. Why? James loved me. We were happy. We were planning a trip to Italy next year. He was the one who held my hand when I was diagnosed. He was the one who researched the best cardiologists. Unless the research wasn't about saving me. I stood up. I needed to know. I needed proof before I called anyone. If I was wrong, if this was some pharmacy error, I would look insane. But if I was right, James was at his tennis club. He wouldn't be back for 3 hours. I started in the bathroom. I checked the medicine cabinet. Empty. I checked the trash can under the sink. Nothing but tissues and floss. Thing. I moved to the kitchen. I tore through the pantry, moving cans of soup and boxes of pasta. Nothing. Then I thought of his home office. James was an architect. He was precise, organized. He kept his office locked because he had sensitive client blueprints. I went to the door. Locked, as always. But I knew where the spare key was. He kept it taped under the bottom drawer of the antique hallway console table. A trick he thought was clever, but I had seen him use it once when he locked himself out. I retrieved the key. My heart was fluttering wildly in my chest. A dangerous rhythm. I forced myself to breathe, in, out. Stay alive, Clara. Stay alive to catch him. I unlocked the office door. The room smelled of leather and stale coffee. It was meticulous. Not a paper out of place. Started with the desk drawers, pens, stapler, checkbook. Normal. I checked the filing cabinet. Tax returns, house deed, insurance policies. I paused at the insurance file. I pulled it out. There was a new policy, taken out 6 months ago. A key person insurance policy combined with a massive expansion of my life insurance. Payout, $5,000. Beneficiary, James R. Sterling. $5 million. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the file. He had bet against my life. He had doubled down on my death. But where were the real pills? If he was swapping them, he had to be putting the real medication somewhere. He couldn't just flush it. The pharmacy counts would be off if he tried to refill too early. But he picked up my refills like clockwork. I looked around the room. My eyes landed on the bookshelf. There was a row of thick, leather-bound architecture encyclopedias that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. Except for one, the history of Roman architecture. It was pulled out slightly, just a millimeter further than the rest. I walked over and pulled the book down. It was heavy, but when I opened it, it wasn't a book. It was a hollowed-out safe box disguised as a book. I'm enorm sen manstum. It wasn't locked. I flipped the lid open. Inside, I found a small, handheld pill presser device used to compress powder into tablets. Next to it was a bag of lactose powder and confectioner's sugar. And tucked in the back, in a Ziploc bag, were hundreds of my real digoxin pills. He had been hoarding them. He was making his own sugar pills, pressing them to look exactly like my medication, and swapping them out week by week. I stared at the stash. This was premeditated murder. It wasn't a crime of passion, it was a slow, calculated execution. He watched me struggle to breathe every day. He watched me clutch my chest in pain, and then he would kiss my forehead and feed me sugar, knowing my heart was slowly starving of the medicine it needed to function. I felt a wave of nausea. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run out of the house and never come back. But then I looked at the calendar on his wall. Italy. Trip. October. He wasn't planning on taking me to Italy. He was planning on taking the money. A cold rage settled over me. It cooled the burning in my chest. It steadied my shaking hands. He thought I was weak. He thought I was a dying woman who would fade away quietly in her sleep, leaving him a rich widower. You know, it's funny how the smallest details can unravel everything. You think you have a handle on things, then one misplaced word, one lingering glance, and the whole meticulously constructed facade just crumbles. I heard the garage door open. He was home early. I had seconds. I quickly shoved the bag of real pills into my pocket, just a handful. I couldn't take them all or he would notice. I put the fake book back on the shelf. I locked the office door and sprinted to the kitchen, sliding the key back under the console table just as the front door handle turned. Clara James called out, his voice cheerful. I picked up some dinner. "How are you feeling, sweetheart?" I stood in the kitchen, clutching the counter. I grabbed a glass of water to hide my shaking hands. I turned to face him. He was wearing his tennis whites, looking healthy, vibrant, and loving. The perfect husband. The executioner. I paused, forcing a weak smile. "I'm feeling a little tired, James. But I think the medicine is finally starting to kick in." James smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "That's good," he said, walking over to kiss my cheek. "Just stick to the schedule. It takes time." I felt the real pills burning a hole in my pocket. "I will," I said. Tonight, I would take my real medicine. And tomorrow, I would start planning how to return the favor. He wanted to play doctor? Fine. But he was about to find out that I was the one writing the prescription. I watched him on the hidden camera pressing sugar pills to kill me, and realized that if I swapped his heart medication with my digoxin, his death would look like a tragic genetic accident. The hardest part wasn't finding out my husband wanted me dead, it was pretending to die on his schedule. For the next 3 days, I lived a double life. In the sanctuary of the locked bathroom, I took the real digoxin pills I had stolen from his stash, feeling the strength slowly return to my limbs. But the moment I stepped out, I had to hunch my shoulders, drag my feet, and paint gray eyeshadow under my eyes to mimic the pallor of a failing heart. I had to become the ghost he wanted me to be, just long enough to figure out how to bury him. Tuesday morning, the sunlight hit the kitchen island where James was blending his morning smoothie. He was humming, a cheerful, light tune. I shuffled into the room, gripping the counter for support. A theatrical flourish I had perfected. "Good morning," I wheezed, letting my hand tremble as I reached for a glass of water. James stopped the blender. He turned to me with a look of practiced concern, but his eyes were scanning me for signs of decay. "You look pale, Clara," he said, walking over to feel my forehead. His hand was warm. It made my skin crawl. "Did you take your pill from the organizer?" "Yes," I lied, an hour ago. In reality, I had flushed the sugar pill down the toilet and swallowed a real one hidden in a hollowed-out tube of lipstick in my purse. "Good girl." He smiled. "I'm going to head to the firm today, big client meeting. I might be late." "Okay," I whispered. "I'll just rest." As soon as his Audi pulled out of the driveway, I dropped the act. I stood up straight. The brain fog that had plagued me for months was clearing. The real medication was working. I needed to know why. Why kill me? Why now? We had been married for 10 years. We had good years. I went to the mailbox. James usually intercepted the mail, but he had been sloppy lately, arrogant in his belief that I was too weak to walk to the curb. I sorted through the stack. Junk mail. Junk mail. And then, a red envelope from the bank. Final notice. Mortgage default. I ripped it open. We were 6 months behind on the mortgage. There was another letter from his architecture firm's partners. Dissolution of partnership. He hadn't just had a bad quarter, he had lost the firm. He was broke, destitute. He had been pretending to go to work for months, probably sitting in a coffee shop or a park, maintaining the illusion of success while the walls closed in. My $5 million life insurance policy wasn't just a windfall. It was his only way out. He was killing me to save his reputation. He would rather be a grieving widower with millions than a bankrupt failure with a living wife. I went back inside, fueled by a cold, sharp anger. I needed visual proof. The pill press in the book safe wasn't enough. I needed to catch him in the act. I drove to a spy shop across town, wearing a hat and sunglasses. I bought 3 high-definition pinhole cameras with motion sensors. I spent the afternoon installing them. One in the kitchen, angled at the medicine cabinet. One in the bedroom, facing my nightstand. And the most important one, inside the smoke detector in his home office, directly above the fake book safe. I synced the feed to my phone. When James came home that evening, I was lying on the couch, feigning breathlessness. "Rough day?" he asked, loosening his tie. A tie he had put on to go nowhere. "The worst one yet," I said. "My chest feels heavy." "I'm sorry, honey," he said. "Let me get you some tea and your evening vitamin." He went into the kitchen. I watched the live feed on my phone, hidden under the blanket. I saw him open the cupboard. I saw him crush the sugar pill into the tea. He brought it to me. "Drink this. It'll help you sleep." I took a sip, then pretended to cough violently, spitting it back into a napkin. "I can't," I gasped. "Too nauseous." "Try. Clara." His voice hardened slightly. "You need it." Away. "How do you know?" And Chimoch? He didn't push it. He looked annoyed, but not suspicious. He went into his office. I waited 5 minutes, then pulled up the office camera feed. James was standing at the bookshelf. He pulled down the history of Roman architecture. He opened the safe. He took out the pill press and the bag of lactose powder. And then I watched as my husband, the man I had vowed to cherish, began to hum that same cheerful tune while he pressed white powder into little round tablets. He looked peaceful. He looked like a man working on a hobby, not a man manufacturing a murder weapon. I recorded it, every second of it. But as I watched him, a thought struck me. A dark, dangerous thought. James was meticulous about his own health. He was terrified of heart disease because his father died young. Every morning, without fail, he took a high-dose multivitamin and a beta blocker for his slightly elevated blood pressure. He kept his pills in a glass jar on his dresser. I looked at the bag of real digoxin pills I had stolen. Digoxin is a lifesaver for someone with arrhythmia like me. But for a person with a healthy heart? Or someone already on beta blockers? It's poison. It causes chaotic heart rhythms. It mimics a massive, sudden heart attack. And if he died of a heart attack? Well, his father died of one. It was genetic. It would look completely natural. I looked at the screen. James held up a sugar pill, inspecting his work with pride. He was planning to swap my next week's supply tonight. I closed the app. I went to the bathroom and retrieved the stash of real digoxin I had saved. I poured them onto the counter. Small, white, round. They looked almost identical to his beta blockers. "You want to swap pills, James?" I whispered to the empty room. "Let's swap." I grabbed a mortar and pestle from the back of the cabinet. He was going to kill me with sugar. I was going to kill him with the truth. He collapsed on the kitchen floor, begging for help, realizing too late that I hadn't just poisoned him. I had framed him for a suicide attempt that would land him in a psych ward if he survived. The sound of the shower running in the master bathroom masked the rattle of the pills in my hand. My husband was washing away the guilt of his day, oblivious to the fact that 10 feet away I was preparing his last meal. I emptied his bottle of beta blockers into the toilet and flushed them away. Then, with steady, surgical precision, I filled the empty amber vial with my own high-dose heart medication. He wanted to stop my heart? Fine. I would let him feel exactly what it's like when your own chest becomes a cage you can't escape. I screwed the cap back onto his bottle just as the water turned off. I placed it back on his nightstand, exactly where it always sat, next to his watch and his wallet. When James walked out of the bathroom, drying his hair with a towel, I was already in bed, reading a book. "Did you take your meds?" he asked, glancing at the empty pill organizer on my side. "Yes," I lied. "I feel tired, though." "It's Sunday," he smiled, sitting on the edge of the bed. He reached for the bag of sugar pills he kept hidden in his gym bag. He had gotten lazy, leaving them closer and closer. He began to fill my organizer for the week. Click, click, click. The sound of plastic snapping shut on my death sentence. "There," he patted my hand. "All set for the week." "You're going to get better, Clara. I can feel it." "I think you're right," I said, looking at the bottle on his nightstand. "I think this is the week everything changes." Monday morning was bright and cheerful. The cinematic contrast was sharp, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows, illuminating the freshly squeezed orange juice and the deadly secrets sitting on the counter. "Jesus, really kinesical. Customer. Mussing pan." James walked in, buttoning his shirt. He looked handsome, successful, the picture of a man who thought he had gotten away with murder. "Big day today," he said, grabbing a piece of toast. "Meeting with the bankruptcy trustees. I think I can convince them to restructure the debt." He didn't know I had seen the foreclosure notice. He was still playing the role of the successful architect. He reached for his pill bottle. My breath hitched in my throat. This was it. He shook one pill out into his palm, small, white, round, indistinguishable from the beta blocker he usually took. He tossed it into his mouth and washed it down with juice. He swallowed. "See you tonight, babe." He kissed my forehead. "Don't overexert yourself." "I won't," I said. "Drive safe." I watched his car disappear down the driveway. I didn't feel guilty. I felt balanced. The scales of justice were tipping back. The day passed in a blur of nervous energy. I spent the time cleaning the house, wiping down surfaces, removing my fingerprints from the pill press in the office just in case, and preparing dinner. I made steak, rare, with heavy creamed spinach and potatoes. A meal loaded with sodium and fat. If the digoxin was going to work, a heavy meal would put even more strain on his system. At 6 p.m., the garage door opened. James walked in. He didn't whistle today. He didn't bounce in. He walked slowly, dragging his briefcase. His face was a shade paler than usual. There was a sheen of sweat on his upper lip. "Hey," he grunted, loosening his tie immediately. "Is it hot in here?" "The thermostat is set to 70, I said, stirring the sauce on the stove. "Are you okay?" "Just indigestion." He rubbed the center of his chest. "I had a spicy lunch. My stomach is in knots." It wasn't his stomach, it was the digoxin. Nausea is one of the first signs of toxicity. "Sit down," I said soothingly. "Dinner is ready. You just need to eat." He sat at the table. He looked at the steak. He looked green. "I don't think I can eat." He pushed the plate away. "My vision is blurry. Is the light flickering?" "No," I said, sitting opposite him. I cut into my steak. The light is steady. Visual disturbances, halos around lights. Another symptom. It was working faster than I thought. His beta blockers must have interacted with the digoxin, amplifying the effect. His heart rate was probably dropping dangerously low right now. "I need water." James gasped. He tried to stand up, but his legs gave out. He stumbled back into his chair, knocking a wine glass over. It shattered. "Clara," he wheezed, clutching his chest. "Something is wrong. My heart. It's fluttering." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "That's strange. You have a healthy heart, James." "Not like mine." He looked at me. Through the haze of his pain, he saw something in my face. I wasn't rushing to him. I wasn't calling 911. I was eating a potato. "Clara," he whispered. "Help me." "It's just side effects, James." I repeated the words he had said to me for 3 months. "You just need to rest. Let me handle everything." "No." He gripped the table, his knuckles white. Call an ambulance." I can't, I said. My phone is in the other room, and frankly, I'm feeling a little breathless myself. Must be the sugar crash. James's eyes went wide. Sugar. He put it together. The architect in him connected the dots. The symptoms. My calmness. The word sugar. What did you do? He rasped, sliding out of the chair onto the floor. He was gasping for air now, clutching at his tie like it was a noose. I stood up and walked over to him. I loomed over his collapsing form. I found the book, James, I said softly. The History of Roman Architecture. His face twisted in horror. I found the press, I continued. I found the lactose powder. And I found the stash. James tried to crawl toward the kitchen counter where his phone was charging. You poisoned me, he choked out. No, I said, crouching down so I was eye level with him. I just gave you a taste of your own medicine, literally. I'll die. He wept. Clara, please, I'll die. Maybe, I shrugged. Or maybe you'll just suffer, like I did. But here is the difference, James. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. I'm not going to let you die of natural causes. Dialed 911. James looked at me with confusion. Was I saving him? 911, what is your emergency? The operator asked. My husband, I said, my voice trembling with fake panic. He's collapsed. I think he took the wrong medication. He's been so stressed lately. He might have tried to hurt himself. I looked at James. Suicide, he whispered, shaking his head. No. Yes, I mouthed to him. If he died, I was free. If he lived, he would wake up in a hospital psych ward, accused of attempting suicide due to his bankruptcy. And while he was locked up, I would have plenty of time to show the police the videos from the nanny cam. Hang on, James, I whispered, stroking his sweaty hair. The ambulance is coming, but I don't think they can fix what's broken in you. The steady, rhythmic beeping of the cardiac monitor was the first sound James heard. It was ironic. For months he had been trying to stop my heart, and now a machine was working overtime to track his. He woke up in a sterile hospital room, bathed in harsh fluorescent light, and when he tried to lift his hands to rub his eyes, he couldn't. His wrists were secured to the metal bed rails with soft leather restraints. He wasn't just a patient, he was a prisoner of the narrative I had spun. I was sitting in the chair next to his bed, reading a magazine. I looked up as his eyes fluttered open. Welcome back, I said softly. James blinked, confusion clouding his gaze. Then, the memory of the steak dinner and the collapsing floor rushed back. His eyes went wide with panic. He yanked at the restraints. Clara, he rasped. His throat was dry from the charcoal they had likely pumped into his stomach. You poisoned me. Shh. I stood up and poured a cup of water, bringing the straw to his lips. You had an accident, James. A terrible, tragic accident. Get away from me, he shouted, turning his head away. Doctor. Nurse. Help. The door flew open instantly. Dr. Evans, my cardiologist, who was now treating my husband, rushed in, followed by a burly nurse. Mr. Sterling, please calm down, Dr. Evans said, checking the monitors. Your heart rate is still unstable. You need to relax. She tried to kill me. James screamed, straining against the straps. She put digoxin in my beta blockers. She's crazy. Arrest her. Dr. Evans looked at James with a mix of pity and professional detachment. Then he looked at me. I dabbed my eyes with a tissue, letting a single, perfect tear slide down my cheek. I'm so sorry, doctor, I sobbed quietly. He's been like this since he woke up. The stress, the bankruptcy, it's broken his mind. Bankruptcy, Dr. Evans asked gently. Yes, I confessed, my voice trembling. We received the foreclosure notice yesterday. He lost his firm. He told me he couldn't go on. He said he was worth more dead than alive. James stopped screaming. He stared at me, his mouth hanging open. He realized what I was doing. I was using his own motive, the insurance money, against him. Workends to sift the naspira banish what was, the truth about the bankruptcy. Was undeniable, Mr. Sterling. Dr. Evans said sternly. Toxicology confirmed a massive overdose of digoxin in your system. That is your wife's medication. Since you don't have a prescription for it, and given the financial stressors your wife described, we have to treat this as an intentional overdose. A suicide attempt. I didn't take it, James pleaded. She swapped them. She swapped the pills. Why would she do that, James? Dr. Evans asked calmly. She's the one who called 911. She saved your life. If she wanted you dead, she could have just let you stop breathing on the kitchen floor. James froze. That was the masterstroke. By calling 911, I had inoculated myself against suspicion. Murderers don't usually call paramedics and cry for help. James stammered. He looked at me. He saw the cold, hard calculation in my eyes. We're going to keep you sedated, Mr. Sterling, Dr. Evans said, signaling the nurse. Psychiatry will be down to evaluate you in the morning. For now, you are on a 72-hour involuntary hold. You are a danger to yourself. The nurse injected something into his IV. James's eyelids drooped. The fight went out of him. Can I have a moment alone with him? I asked Dr. Evans. Before he falls asleep. Of course, Dr. Evans said, patting my shoulder. You're a strong woman, Clara. Be careful. They left the room. The silence returned, broken only by the beep, beep, beep of the monitor. I leaned over the bed rail. James was groggy, fighting the sedative, but he was listening. You played a good game, James, I whispered, brushing a lock of hair off his sweaty forehead. But you forgot one thing. I'm the one with the heart condition. I know everything there is to know about these pills. What? You won't get away with it, he slurred. I'll tell the police about the pill press. Oh, the pill press. I smiled. The one in the fake book? I moved it. James's eyes widened. I moved it to your car trunk. I lied. I had destroyed it, but he didn't need to know that. But that's not the problem, James. The problem is the video. I pulled out my phone. I held it in front of his face. I pressed play. The footage from the nanny cam was crystal clear. It showed James in his office, humming a tune, pressing white powder into the pill press. It showed him holding up a sugar pill and smiling. I have hours of footage, I whispered. Of you manufacturing fake medication. Of you swapping my pills. Of you slowly, methodically murdering your wife. James stared at the screen. The evidence was irrefutable. So here are your options, I said, putting the phone away. Option A. You keep screaming that I poisoned you. The police will investigate. I will hand over this video. You will be charged with attempted murder, insurance fraud, and spousal abuse. You will go to prison for 20 to life. And in prison, broke and alone, you will rot. James swallowed hard. A tear leaked out of his eye. Option B. I continued. You shut up. You accept the doctor's diagnosis. You admit that the bankruptcy was too much, and you tried to take the easy way out. You go to a nice, quiet psychiatric facility for a few months to treat your depression. We file for divorce quietly. You sign over the assets. What's left of them? To me as part of the settlement. I lose everything, he whispered. You lost everything the moment you decided my life was worth $5 million. I said. The sedative was pulling him under. His eyes were closing. Choose, James, I said. Prison or the psych ward? Murderer or suicidal? He looked at me one last time. The arrogance was gone. The architect was gone. All that was left was a broken man who realized he had built his own cage. Psych ward, he mumbled. Good choice, I said. I sat back in the chair and picked up my magazine. When Dr. Evans came back 10 minutes later, James was asleep. How is he? The doctor asked. He's peaceful, I said, looking at my husband. I think he's finally accepted that he needs help. You saved him, Clara. The doctor said. I know, I replied. I saved him for the next part. The part where I took the house, the car, and the freedom he tried to steal from me. I looked at my watch. It was time to take my digoxin. The real one. My heart felt strong. Stronger than it had in years. He signed his life away to avoid prison, unaware that as I walked out with the deed to the house, I whispered 5 words to the doctor that would keep him locked up for another 2 weeks. The psychiatric facility smelled of lavender air freshener and industrial bleach, a desperate attempt to mask the scent of misery. I walked through the double magnetic doors, hearing the heavy thud click of the locks sealing behind me. It was a sound I had grown to love over the past week. It was the sound of my safety. I carried a leather briefcase, not a purse. Inside weren't grapes or magazines for a sick husband. Inside was the paperwork that would strip him of the last things he owned. James was sitting in the common room, staring at a muted television playing cartoons. He looked different. The confident, tennis-playing architect was gone. In his place was a man wearing scrub pants and a t-shirt, unshaven, with a slight tremor in his hands, a lingering souvenir from the digoxin overdose. When he saw me, his eyes narrowed. There was no love there, only fear and hate. "You look well," I said, sitting in the plastic chair opposite him. "And you look alive," he spat, keeping his voice low so the orderlies wouldn't hear. "Which is disappointing. The doctors tell me you're making progress," I said, ignoring his jab. "They say you've stopped screaming about poison." "What?" "Because I know they won't believe me." James leaned in, his eyes manic. "You played this perfectly, Clara. The grieving wife saving the suicidal husband. Bravo. But I'm getting out of here. The 72-hour hold is up. I signed a voluntary extension for a week to sell the depression story, but I'm checking out tomorrow." "Are you?" I asked, placing the briefcase on the table. "Yes," James said. "And then we're going to have a serious talk. Because we're even, Clara." "I tried to kill you?" "Fine. You tried to kill me. Mutually assured destruction. If you go to the police with that video, I'll tell them you swapped the pills. It's my word against yours. A jury might just convict us both." He leaned back, looking smug. He thought he had found a stalemate. He thought he could walk away from this with a divorce and half the assets. "We aren't even, James," I said softly. I clicked the briefcase open. I pulled out a file folder. "I went through your laptop again," I said. "Specifically, the travel folder for our Italy trip in October." James flinched. His smugness faltered. "I found the tickets," I continued. "You booked a first-class seat for yourself. One way. To Rome." "And so?" He shrugged. "I hadn't booked the return yet. And for me," I pulled out a printout. "You didn't book a ticket at all. But you did make several inquiries to a service called Angel Flights." I slid the paper across the table. "Angel Flights, International Repatriation of Human Remains." James went pale. "You bookmarked the pricing for transporting a body from Florence to New York," I said, my voice trembling slightly with the horror of it. "You weren't just going to let me die here. You were planning to drag me to Italy, kill me there, and fly my body back as cargo. You calculated the shipping weight, James. You put in my weight." I stared at him. This wasn't just greed. This was a level of psychopathy I couldn't comprehend. That's circumstantial," he stammered. "It's premeditation," I corrected. "It proves that the sugar pills weren't an accident. It proves you had a timeline, a budget, a disposal plan. If I show this to a district attorney, along with the video of you making the pills, they won't just see a bad marriage, they'll see a monster. And you won't get 20 years, James. You'll get life without parole." James looked at the paper. He looked at the walls of the psych ward. He realized his stalemate had just evaporated. "What do you want?" he whispered. I pulled out a thick document. "A post-nuptial agreement," I said, "and a power of attorney." "What does it say?" "It says that due to your mental instability and reckless financial decisions that led to the bankruptcy, you are transferring the deed of the house to me. Sole ownership. You are transferring your car. You are transferring the remaining liquid assets in the joint account." "You want everything?" he hissed. "I want the security you tried to steal from me," I said. "You put me $5 million in debt with your firm's collapse. I'm taking the assets to pay off your mess. You leave this marriage with nothing but your freedom." "And if I sign?" he asked, picking up the pen. His hand was shaking. "If you sign," I said, "I burn the Italy printouts. I delete the video of the pill press. You finish your treatment here, we divorce quietly, and you go start your miserable life somewhere else. You stay out of prison." James looked at the document. He was an architect. He was used to building things. Now, he was signing the demolition order for his own life. He looked at me with pure venom. "I should have used a higher dose," he whispered. "You should have," I agreed. But you were too cheap to buy enough lactose powder. He pressed the pen to the paper. Scratch. Scratch. He signed the house away. He signed the car away. He signed his life away. I took the papers and checked the signatures. Perfect. Goodbye, James, I said, standing up. I'm checking out tomorrow, he said, staring at the table. Don't be there when I come to get my clothes. I won't be, I said. I walked to the door. I buzzed for the orderly. A doctor was standing in the hallway reviewing a chart. Dr. Harrison. Mrs. Sterling, Dr. Harrison said, leaving so soon. Yes, I said, putting on my sunglasses. I lowered my voice, leaning in close to the doctor. I'm worried, doctor. Why? He signed the papers, I said, patting my briefcase. But he said something disturbing just now. He said he still hears the voice telling him to finish the job. He said he knows where I sleep. Dr. Harrison frowned, looking through the glass at James, who was staring at the wall, muttering to himself in anger. He threatened you, the doctor asks. He said he should have used a higher dose, I whispered, letting my lip quiver. I'm terrified to let him out, doctor. He's not ready. Dr. Harrison nodded gravely. Thank you for telling me, Clara. Threatening a spouse is a serious indicator of continued instability. We can't release a patient who is a danger to others. Please, I said, keep him safe. Keep me safe. I will, Dr. Harrison said. I'll revoke his voluntary status. We'll switch him to a 14-day involuntary hold for deeper evaluation. He won't be checking out tomorrow. I smiled. A small, sad, worried wife smile. Thank you, doctor. I walked down the hallway, the sound of my heels clicking on the linoleum. James thought he was checking out tomorrow to start his life from scratch. He was about to find out that his stay at the Hotel California had just been extended. And by the time he finally got out, I would have sold the house, liquidated the assets, and moved to a place where the only Italian thing I would encounter was a glass of wine on a balcony he couldn't reach. I raised a glass of vintage Chianti to the empty chair across from me, smiling as I realized the best revenge wasn't killing him, it was living the $5 million life he tried to steal. 3 months later, the sunlight hitting my face didn't feel cold or sterile like the hospital lights. It felt warm, golden, and alive. I was sitting at a small wrought iron table in a piazza in Florence, Italy, staring up at the magnificent dome of the Duomo. This was the exact spot James had marked on the map in his disposal plan. He had intended for me to be here as a corpse in a cargo crate. Instead, I was here drinking a vintage Chianti, very much alive, and entirely alone. I took a sip of the wine. It was bold and earthy. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from my bank app. Deposit. Received $450,000. 00. Ref. Sale of 42 Oakwood Drive. The house was gone. I had sold it to a nice young couple who had no idea that the previous owner had built a murder lab in the office. I sold the furniture. I sold his Audi. I liquidated every single brick of the life James had built to trap me. I thought about where James was right now. When Dr. Harrison finally released him from the psychiatric facility 3 weeks ago, James walked out expecting to fight. He expected to come home and bully me back into submission. Instead, he found a changed lock and a process server waiting on the curb with a restraining order. And the final divorce decree. He had no money for a lawyer. He had no car to drive. He had no friends, because I had quietly let it slip to their social circle that James had a mental breakdown due to gambling debts and drug abuse. The last I heard, the once arrogant architect was living in a studio apartment above a laundromat on the east side, working cash jobs because his credit was ruined. He was serving a life sentence, not in a prison cell, but in the mediocrity he despised. I picked up my phone. There was a voicemail from a blocked number. I knew who it was. I pressed play, holding the phone to my ear against the noise of the bustling Italian square. Clara. His voice was thin, desperate. Please. I know you sold the house. I saw the listing close. I have nothing. I can't pay rent. Just send me $5,000 for old time's sake. I kept your secret. I signed the papers. You owe me. I listened to the background noise on his end. Sirens. A barking dog. The sound of a life falling apart. He still thought this was a transaction. He still thought he had leverage. I didn't delete the message. I saved it. It was a better souvenir than any magnet or postcard. I opened my purse and pulled out the blue plastic pill organizer, the one he used to fill with sugar. It was empty of pills now. My cardiologist, Dr. Evans, had reduced my dosage significantly. It turned out that living with a sociopath put a lot of strain on the heart. Without James, my blood pressure was normal. My arrhythmias were rare. I wasn't dying, I was healing. I opened the Sunday tab of the organizer. Inside, there wasn't a pill. There was a small, smooth pebble I had picked up from the driveway the day I kicked him out. I opened Monday, an olive pit from my first dinner in Rome. I opened Tuesday, a small gold charm I bought for myself by Monday. I was filling the days with memories, not poison. A waiter walked up to my table. "Signora, another glass?" He asked with a charming smile. "Yes, please," I said. "And the dessert menu?" "Of course. Are you waiting for your husband?" he asked, glancing at the empty chair. I looked at the empty chair. I thought about the man who wanted to trade my life for $5 million. I thought about the sugar melting on my tongue. "No," I smiled, and this time it reached my eyes. "My husband couldn't make it. He had a heart condition." The waiter nodded sympathetically and walked away. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my single, daily digoxin pill. The real one. I popped it into my mouth and washed it down with the wine. It tasted bitter. But it was the good kind of bitter. The kind that keeps you alive. James wanted to stop my heart. He thought it was weak. He thought it was fragile. He was wrong. He didn't break my heart. He just tested it. And it turned out, my heart was the strongest muscle in my body. I looked out at the golden sunset over Florence. The best revenge wasn't poisoning him back. It wasn't getting him arrested. The best revenge was sitting right here, breathing this air, spending his money, and living the life he thought he could steal from me. I raised my glass to the empty chair. "Salute, James," I whispered. "Hope the sugar crash was worth it." If you loved this story of resilience, hit that like button and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what is the best revenge you've ever gotten? Thanks for watching.